Welcome to the Rockin Rich Lynch on the Radio Show. I'm your host, Rockin Rich Lynch, inviting you to join me as we discover great new music by bands and artists from around the world. With interviews, music news and reviews, great prizes, and a whole lot more. Visit us online today at soundpress.net for great music promotion and publicity. Hi, this is Rockin Rich Lynch, and you're listening to the very best of Rockin Rich Lynch on the radio. We recently moved our operations from the New York, New Jersey market to Nashville, Tennessee, and we are now looking for a production and broadcast partner in the region to take the radio show to new heights. If you're a band, musician, solo act, or represent a musical project in any genre, please visit soundpress.net and our new site, musiccitynashville.net, to learn how we can help get your message to the world. Now, please enjoy this great interview from our archives. The person we are about to speak with rocketed to international awareness as the lead vocalist and bass player in what was called the first real supergroup of the 1980s. It is a great thrill for me right now to welcome John Wetton of the band Asia to the program. Hi, John. How are you?
I'm well. I'm very well, thank you. Yeah, I'm doing okay. It's a lovely sunny day here in the UK, and I'm very healthy, very happy.
Well, that's good news. John, when Asia was formed in 1981 and released their debut, did the group and the record album exceed your wildest dreams and expectations?
Oh, completely. Yeah, nobody could have foreseen that. I mean, everyone in the band had a little bit of success, some more than others. I mean, ELP were big, so were Yes and everything, but nobody could have foreseen the success that Asia had. It was just phenomenal. I mean, we happened to coincide with the birth of MTV, so that kind of gave us a bit of a leg up in the sales and the visibility stakes, I must say. You know, being in heavy rotation on MTV in 1982 was you couldn't buy publicity like that. It was fantastic.
Absolutely. That's why I'm talking to you right now, John. I was 16 years old and glued to my television for a good part of the decade.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Not now, though, huh?
Well, not as much, because there's other things to do, and the singularity of MTV is not what it once was. So,
yeah.
Let me back up. OriginalAsia.com is the website. John Wetton, lead vocalist, bass player, songwriter, singer for that band, is on the phone with us right now. They have a brand new album called Gravitas out from Frontiers Records. The band is gearing up for a tour of Japan, and they will be coming back to the United States in October. We're going to be talking a little bit about the new album. But, John, as mentioned, Asia was a supergroup, and the collective parts of that group came from other bands that were very progressive in nature, and some of the prog rock fans of those bands didn't really necessarily adopt or adapt to the music of Asia. Yet the band Asia was able to create their own very large fan base based on the style of music that the debut album contained.
Yeah, I mean, the fact is that music was moving into another decade. It was 1980s. It wasn't the 70s anymore. And most of our bands, like King Crimson, ELP, and Yes, had made their name by taking one 3-minute song and expanding it to 11 minutes. That was the name of the game in the 70s. You could do that in the 70s, but you couldn't do it in the 80s. We couldn't do that and survive. If we had come out with an album like our alma mater, if we'd come out with an album like Yes, like King Crimson, like ELP, then we probably would have sold 300,000 copies, and we wouldn't be having this conversation now. So something had to happen. The fact is that I was already writing songs that were more concise, had more personal lyrics. They weren't so kind of art school. And if people didn't like it, then tough, because that was the way that I was going. I really didn't. I didn't see any future in 1980 for kind of the fantasy lyrics, and it had to be reality for me. I'd been brought up in the latter part of the 70s on a diet of Joni Mitchell, Marvin Gaye, all of this stuff, which was it was real. It was first person. It was singing about stuff that affected the songwriter, and that turned me on. I really, really wanted to write in that vein. And the first Asia record is pretty much a document of all the sort of stuff, the personal stuff that I've been through in the preceding 3 years. The decision to go with shorter songs and more personal songs wasn't really a decision at all. It had already happened. It had already happened to me. When I met Jeff Downes and we started writing together, that was the way he wrote too. I mean, he comes from very much the same background that I do, which is church music, where you've got about 4 minutes to get your point over, you know. And,
yeah.
So we hit it off very well, and the band was incredibly successful.
Yeah,
I think
good stuff happening
there would have been
for
people
you.
that were turned off by that amount of success anyway, because you know I don't want to be a member of that club because it's too inclusive. You know, that's not exclusive enough for me. Sure, I mean, if you analyze Heat of the Moment, some of the stuff in there is incredibly complex. It's not as straightforward as it sounds, and it's very much like if you listen to Steely Dan, for instance, then the chords are ludicrously complex, and yet they managed to make it sound like a sort of straight-ahead pop song.
Right, that's true. Now, John, was that overwhelming success a real shock to you? Was it an eye-opener, or were you able to take it in stride?
Well, I had no idea that was going to happen. No idea. The big shock came when the record company said, okay, let's have another one, you know, less than a year after the first one, and which I think was a mistake. We could have toured on that album for another 2 years, you know, not a problem at all, and we could have taken our time writing the second one. As it was, we were forced into a studio in Quebec and told to come up with another album like the first one.
Right,
So,
and there was a quick year and a half, and the original Asia was pretty much snuffed out, maybe.
yeah. So it was a tall order, and actually looking back on it, I think the songs on the album are pretty good. They're more consistent than the first album, but you're having to kind of walk in the wake of something that had just sold like 15 million, you know. So it's just an impossible task, really.
So the original...
And then, consequently, the band fell apart at that stage, you know.
Right, and 25 years go by, and the band gets back together in 2006, and, you know, really to the delight and the joy of fans. But I know that the 3 studio albums you put out, the number of tours that you did, kind of, in a way, was a celebration and a recapturing of what you guys left on the table back in the early 80s.
Yeah, we all felt there was unfinished business from the first time round, you know. So we'd learned a lot from our mistakes. We had all matured a lot. We'd spent another 25 years working with the people we really didn't want to work with. And so when we came back together again, it was a joyful celebration. It still is. It's still, you know, a really, really good thing to be part of. It's a joy to play in this band. If I wasn't in the band, I'd want to be in the band. And if I wasn't, the records that we make are records that I would buy. That's the criterion with us. You know, it's not. We don't make commercial music just for the sake of it. I make records that I would want to buy. My heroes are the Beatles, Beach Boys, Eric Clapton, Jack Bruce, you know, all of those guys had the ability to play incredibly well, but also made great records, and that's where I want to be.
John Wetton, lead singer, bass player for Asia, is on the phone with us right now. Original Asia is the website. John, let me just jump back in time a little bit, jump away from Asia just for a second. Robert Fripp has announced another reformation, another configuration of his band, King Crimson, of what you were a part of in the early 70s. Now, Robert being who he is, he's pretty much the only guy who's been a regular member of King Crimson for all that time. Were you aware that your time in the band would be relatively short-lived?
No, I thought I wanted that to go on for another 20 years, but that was not to be. Looking at the history of the band in the last 40 years, it seems like nobody's job is safe in that band, except for Robert. But I wish them well. It's not the same. It's not the same band that I was in, and it's not the same music that I was playing. It's changed. There's none of the pastoral side. The band, the King Crimson, up to '74, contained this sort of mix of cerebral and pastoral music. The first album, the second album, third, all the way up to Red, from Court of the Crimson King to Red, was a beautiful mix of the what would appeal to the head and what would appeal to the heart. And for me now, it's gone completely into the area of cerebral music. You've lost all that. There's nobody really singing the ballads the way that Greg and I would have sung them. For what it is, I'm sure people are going to love it, but it's not really anything that I was to do with in 1974.
Right.
So I wish him well. I think it's great that he's still working, but it's not my cup of tea.
Right. I mean, that's their story. Their story is they had you guys kind of in the 70s, and then Robert Fripp kind of changed a little bit. So they're like a story of two different bands. I love rock and roll music, and I've always been interested in the stories that bands have. And we're getting some of the Asia story and some of the John Wetton story right now. The current form of Asia faced with a daunting task to replace the retiring Steve Howe, picks a young gun, a real young gun. 27-year-old Sam Colson is now a full-time member of the band Asia. How is he holding up his high-profile role in the band?
Well, the guy we had a very short list of people to replace Steve Howe, and one of those was Steve Lukather, and one of those was Paul Gilbert from Mr. Big. Both of those guys said very flattered, but I can't because I'm doing something else. I've got too much to do. So when Paul Gilbert said that he couldn't, we said, well, do you know someone who can? And he said, yeah, I know two guys, actually. I know two guys, one American and one British. And he gave us the details. We watched the YouTubes. We spoke to them. And it really, Sam got the job mainly because his vibrato is to die for. He can play the technical stuff, and he has the big chords going. He's got a sort of slightly bluesy edge to him, but it's certainly a harder edge than Steve Howe. And he has no history. Nobody knows him from a hole in the ground. He is brilliant. He's absolutely brilliant. A wonderful guy. He's a wonderful player, and he suited our purposes. He comes from a town which is about 30 miles from where I was born, and 30 miles from where Carl Palmer was born. That's immaterial. The other guy, the American who was recommended, would have got the job if he'd fit the bill, but it just turned out that Sam really was the man for us. As for filling Steve Howe's shoes, I don't think he has to. I don't think we're replacing Steve Howe. People shouldn't expect the guy to be like Steve Howe. He's not at all. He plays the same notes, but they're completely different. He has a different intonation, he has a different attitude, different sound, everything. But I think people were going to love him.
Hey, John.
Because he's really, really good. A tall order for him, and he knows that the spotlight is going to be on him for quite a lot of the upcoming tour. So let's hope he's up to it. I'm sure he is. We've done some gigs with him. We've done a whole German tour. We did a couple of gigs in the UK. We did one in the Roman Amphitheatre in Plovdiv in Bulgaria with the orchestra. He's good. He's great. Yeah.
John,
no problem. I think when he hits America, he'll be sensational.
What interests me about the choice a little bit is, I'm sort of a musicologist, been watching rock and roll, bands in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and the thing that's emerged over the years, especially in the last quarter of a century, is the idea of band as brand. And the fact that you guys went with such a young guy in Sam Colson, you can almost see. You could see a way that Asia could move forward. Maybe if he remains in a band.
I think at some stage you will see bands being completely taken over by younger guys, one by one,
Right.
until there's nobody from the original band there. But there is the original concept. And I think that's the natural way for it to go. You don't lose the Berlin Philharmonic Orchestra because one of the first violins dies. You know, it moves on. And I think that's possibly the way that rock will go.
Right. I mean, I think there will be a few bands 100 years from now that both you and I are aware of that will be carried on. I mean, I know Kiss has alluded to the fact that they're auditioning members to send them checks when those guys are in the retirement home. So
why not? Yeah.
They're planning on it.
I mean, we won't be around to see it, but I'm sure it will happen because there's too much invested in the brand name. You know, not in terms of money, but in terms of people's joy at the music that was created by those brand names. You know, you only have to go on one of the cruises to see that people love the kind of the 70s progressive rock music. They love it. You know, they will go to any lengths, and it doesn't matter if they're seeing not the original band play it. They're there for that experience of that kind of music, and that's not going to die out.
Hey, the other thing that interests me about Sam is how do you guys relate? I know you guys have the common denominator of music, but are there other things that you can kind of bond over?
Yeah, humor. We have a very good dressing room, as they say. You know, he fits in perfectly with the way that this band laughs in the dressing room, which is great. You know, there's not a problem. There is one big common denominator. I think you have to be able to laugh on the road, otherwise it would just be tragic. You know, there's so much boredom and there's so much inertia on the road that you have to keep each other going with some kind of. There has to be a band spirit, and part of that is humor. You know, particularly with British guys. I'm sure Americans are exactly the same. I work some of the time with District 97. And so I know that all bands thrive on humor. You know, it's what lifts us up. And it's exactly the same with Asia. We have a very good dressing room now. It's very funny, and we can take that on stage with us. You know.
John, in the downtime, would you say more often than not things go wrong on the road than they do right?
Yeah, and don't expect anything to go right. If you do, it will go wrong. That is Sod's law. That is Murphy's law. Rule number one. If you think it's going to be fabulous, it won't be. So you just learn to adapt. I mean, I learned to be fairly pragmatic about this stuff. Not have too high expectations, because when things don't happen, I shouldn't be too disappointed. But you can compensate in other ways. You know, the live show is kind of so much more than just music. That people are going along to share in the whole kind of event. You know, and so many times I think that I've been part of a bad show because there have been mistakes, and people don't really notice the mistakes. I don't notice the mistakes when I go to see another band. You know, I go into the dressing room afterwards and say, "Oh, that was brilliant." And they go, "Oh, it was terrible. We made so many mistakes." And I didn't notice. You know, I'm a musician. I didn't even notice.
Well, you're a musician, so that makes you probably a perfectionist as well.
Well, also people go for the big picture. You know, they go for the big picture. They don't go for the nitty little gritty details.
Right. You're aware of your own playing. They're not. They're watching everything else. Hey, John, just a couple more. I know you're very busy getting ready for your tour of Japan right now. OriginalAsia.com is the website. Gravitas is the brand new album from the historic rock band Asia, out now on Frontiers Records. Let's just talk a little bit about the songs. John, you have a wide palette of subject matter that you pull from as you craft your songs, and Gravitas is no different. Nyctophobia springs from your real fear of the dark.
Yeah. About 9 years ago, I stopped drinking and all hell broke loose for me. I realized that I got every phobia under the sun. You know, so it's a very, very real, terrifying prospect. It's not something that I take lightly, but yeah, for about a year I couldn't do anything. I couldn't go out. I couldn't function really. It took me quite a long time to learn how to get back into life again. And nyctophobia was just one of the things. I had to sleep with a light on for about a year, in fact. Yes, it was stopping drinking is not just about stopping drinking. There's a whole pile of things a whole pile of reasons why I drank. And when I took the alcohol away, I was faced with reality, and it was a very, very tough thing. I'm extremely glad that I don't drink anymore. But it was all I know is that alcohol was covering up a whole load of deficiencies in my character and in my entire being. And so reality for me was a very difficult concept.
As you said, John, your song's very personal. Most of the great songs that you've written.
All of my songs are autobiographical, and they're from personal experience. Yeah.
That being said, there is a song about a phrase called Joe DiMaggio's glove. Now, you being a good Englishman, I'm sure you love soccer. How about the cricket? How about the cricket?
But Joe DiMaggio's glove. I heard the expression. Someone said, "Oh my God, it's as soft as Joe DiMaggio's glove," and I thought I got to use that phrase. And so the song is about the guy, the hard-hearted, hard-nosed guy, who meets the right girl, and he suddenly wonders why he hasn't done this all his life when he first experiences love. And love just happens to rhyme with glove, so it's all curves, It's perfect. There you go. I don't think you have to be, a dyed-in-the-wool American to appreciate Joe DiMaggio's kind of personality and the impact that he's had on American culture. He's got a very, very usable name in terms of poetry.
Plus
also he stands for. It seems to be a symbol for something that.
He was one of those early crossovers.
Kind of American, which he's a sporting hero. So it's like. I guess it's like for us, like David Beckham. I wouldn't use David Beckham in a rock lyric.
Doesn't he have a nickname you can use?
Huh?
Doesn't Beckham? Well, Beckham has a nickname. Does Beckham has?
Sorry, I'm losing you now. I can't hear you at all.
So listen. That's a great song, John. JohnWetton.com, JohnWettonAsia.com, JohnWetton.co.uk is his official website. Hey, getting ready for Japan. The band Asia does really good over there.
Yeah, we have a very loyal following in Japan, and we'll be there this time next week. We'll be on a plane going to Japan. We have a couple of dates in the UK before we go to that. We have 2 days rehearsal, 2 dates in the UK, then we go to Japan for 4 dates, and we come to the US for September and October, all of September, all of October.
Hey, John, it was a great introductory getting to know you today. I've had many people come back. Maybe we'll speak to you in the future. It sounds like Asia has a really promising future from here on out. So good luck. Have a great tour. Good luck with the album,
Rich.
And we'll see you.
Thank you very much indeed. God bless you. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Rockin Rich Lynch on the Radio Show, part of the SoundPress.net radio network. Remember, if you're a band or artist looking for promotion, or if you'd like to sponsor this show or add this program to your station, please get in touch with us today at SoundPress.net.